And it's apply's job to call the function on those arguments. So this map here, this one, is what tells us that scheme uses applicative order. Right? Because we evaluated the expressions before going to apply. Apply takes a procedure and a list of argument values as its two arguments. So in the world of apply, and this is important to understand, there are no expressions. So this thing that says proc, this isn't an expression whose value is a procedure. It's not, for example, a lambda expression. It's a procedure, which is its own data type. And a procedure isn't something you can type in to scheme. You can't have a procedure as an expression. Procedures are the values of some expressions. And then args is a list of the actual argument values, whatever they are. So these aren't expressions either. These things are, you know, whatever they are, numbers or lists or who knows what. But they're values. So there's no evaluation of proc or args. They've already been evaluated. So apply doesn't know about the notation of scheme at all. All it knows about is the semantics of what it means to call a function with arguments. Well, what does it mean? There are two possibilities. So any procedure that we have is either a primitive procedure or what the book calls a compound procedure, which is one that we created with lambda. Primitive is the ones that are built in. Compound is the ones that were built with lambda. If it's primitive, and this is one of the cheats here, we call it by magic. What that really means is that in a real scheme system, a primitive will have been translated into machine language, into the, you know, ones and zeros stuff that computers actually know how to carry out. So what we're doing is calling that little chunk of machine language code is the way we really handle primitives. How did I get up there? Oops. Ah. Wait. Let's try this again. Okay. Otherwise, oops, there we go. If it's a compound procedure, one that came from a lambda expression, one of those things with two bubbles, then how do we evaluate it? So as always, you have to read this from the inside out when you have a composition of functions like this. So before we look at eval, we're going to look at these inner expressions. And one of them is pull the procedure body out of the procedures. That's one of the things in the left bubble, is the procedure body. And that's a scheme expression. And so that's the way in which expressions sneak into apply. We're not giving it expressions as arguments, but inside a procedure, if it's a procedure created with lambda, there's a procedure body, which is an expression, or actually a sequence of expressions, really. So this should say eval sequence, but this is the short version. The second argument to eval is this thing called extend environment. So we're creating a new environment. That's what procedure calls do. And the way, how do you make a new environment? Remember back a month ago? You take the formal parameters, which come from the left bubble of the procedure, and you take the actual arguments, which were given to apply as an argument, and you pair them up. So if we have 3 formal parameters, we should have 3 actual arguments, and we make bindings for each of those, and that's a new frame. And then we use that frame to extend an environment. What environment do we extend? Okay, so here's another important little detail. This does not say env. In fact, apply doesn't know anything about a current environment. What apply knows about is the right bubble of the procedure. Inside of procenv is a selector. Procenv and formals and body are 3 selectors for the abstract data type procedure. So now we're pulling out the environment from the right bubble and saying that's the one we're going to extend. So the procedure tells us the environment in which it was created, and that's the one we extend. What's the name for that? That choice of environment? Yeah. Lexical scoping, yeah. What's the alternative? Dynamic scoping, and what does that mean? What's dynamic scope mean? Yeah. Yeah, you extend the environment in which the procedure is called. So if we wanted to do dynamic scope, apply would take another argument, which is n for the current environment. And this would say extend environment, formals proc, args, env. That would be dynamic scope. Lexical scope, the procedure tells us which environment to extend, namely the one in which it was created. Okay? So what I'd like you to see is that I'm telling you again in a different form what you learned a month ago about the environment model. You know, we had pictures on the board with bubbles and boxes and arrows all over the place. This is an implementation of that. That's exactly what it is. So I hope that having seen the environment model will help you understand the metacircular evaluator, and also, conversely, seeing the evaluator will pin down for you, maybe, how the environment model actually works.